I started working at Del Mar in 1978, and in 79, I borrowed my roommate's camera, and it all started there. I kept seeing these photographers coming in with the pro skaters, and it'd be like James Cassimus and Friedman, and Jim Goodrich and Terrebonne and William Sharp and some other guys. And then a couple months later, we'd see the photos in the magazine. We'd be, oh, that's pretty cool. So after working there for about 6 months or so, I borrowed my roommate's camera. He loaded the film for me. I didn't know how to load the film. I didn't know what to do. He goes, just make sure the sun's behind you and just match the needle, with the f-stops and the shutter. And then I shot one roll of film. And so I started, just shooting as a hobby. And I didn't have any money for film, so I figured out that black and white was cheaper than color, though, even though I had no way to print black and white, or I didn't even have a loop, a magnifier to look at the negatives. I was just shooting, and I'd hold them up against the sun, and yeah, it was like I was just lost pretty much. There was a guy, Sonny Miller, who was he was on the skate team, and he was a photographer, and he ended up as a surf photographer and then a cinematographer. But one day at Palomar College, where I went to school, he asked me if I wanted to print some of my negatives. So I brought my negatives to school, and we went in the dark room. And as soon as he showed me, how to print a picture, off a negative, when it came up in the developer, I got really, jazzed, and that's when I decided that I wanted to really learn everything I could about photography. I just delved right in, and there was no turning back. I took every photography class I could take. I was still working at the Del Mar Skate Ranch. I ended up being the manager of the pro shop. I worked there for 6 years. Slept on the pool table for 8 months once, doing night security when I didn't have a place to live, and I just saved my money for an apartment. And those were the days where I was like, all my money was going for photography, pretty much. You just soak everything in. You're like a sponge, and you go, oh, I like this guy's look, and you are totally inspired by certain people, and those same people now are really big influences in my life. Going into it, like 1983 when Transworld started, I was able to, really I was able to come up with ideas and put all those ideas toward the magazine, editorial photos. You got to think, in 83, there's two magazines, and I worked at one, and I helped start one. And we didn't know that skating would be here in 2018. You didn't think of it that way. Now you look, it's got such a long history that you see that it's going to be here in another 20, 30, 40 years, or more. There'll always be skateboarding. Back then, skateboarding died right when I started shooting photos. All the photographers left. They went to surfing and moto and stuff like that. And I was just starting, and there were maybe 4 photographers. There's other people shooting, but there were only 4 or 5, a handful of people that were actually, I'm not even going to say making a living off of it. Now you can say, yeah, I shoot skateboarding, and it's like everybody knows what you're talking about, because of, the X Games or the Tony Hawk game or whatever. Even people who don't skate know, everything. I was into fine art photography too, so I thought I was going to end up teaching or shooting large format stuff out in the desert. I do that, but
yeah.
But it's, I was able to make my living. I started to look at photography more graphically working for a magazine. I always looked at stuff as a layout, like you didn't want the action right in the middle on a spread because the guy's going to be in the gutter, or at least his face. You don't want his face in the gutter. So I didn't know that was going to be a cover, but I wanted it to be a really nice single page, and I went and shot 2 rolls with Swank, and I had him doing everything. I had him doing nose wheelies, which you call them manuals now, and I have him doing a coffin, and one he's laying down, and he's doing a coffin, and we were just shooting in between traffic. But I wanted it just to be, skating from point A to point B. Everybody relates to pushing. That's the essential movement in skateboarding is the push. And I think there were two shots that were kind of like that, and I just picked that one. I thought, you know, everything lined up. Besides me, there was one other photographer shooting digital. You know, I got into digital quickly because I was the oldest guy and I didn't want to be that old curmudgeon dude that was, you know, like, you know, screw digital, you know. And the first time I used it at a contest, I borrowed a camera from Transworld Snow and I shot sequences all weekend. And then went in on Monday and went to Dave. I was like, Swift, we gotta shoot digital. This is the answer to our film wasting problem, because we were doing so many sequences. You know, you'd shoot 20 rolls for one trick and still not get it. And people would complain, well, the other photographers, a lot of them were like, well, it's not as good as film. And I go, well, yeah, but for a sequence you can't tell. And then it doesn't look as good as film. And then when they finally switched over and they started to really tweak their digital, I was like, now it really doesn't look like film. You know, the over sharpening, and or they were, you know, tweaking, you know, colors or whatever, you know. And so to me, it was just a tool, you know. Digital is just, and in the end, at the end of the arguments, I would go, in the end, it's all digital. Once it gets in the magazine, it's gone to a digital form. And now it's like you can't say that digital, it's not even an argument anymore. Digital is, there's more information on a digital file. I love film. It does have a certain look, you know, and I shoot film, but yeah, it's just when you work for a magazine, it got to where people would keep giving me film, and I'm like, I gotta take it and get it scanned, and it slows everything down. It is skateboarding, you know. We're not doing high art here or anything. It's skateboarding, you know. I could easily get a full page photo out of a 4 megapixel file, you know, of the 1Ds, the Canon 1D.
Yeah.
You know, there was no problem. I didn't want to be stuck in the past, you know, because it's easy I meet guys my own age that are like, yeah, I don't do Instagram. I don't do Facebook. I don't have a website. And you're just like, wow, how do you stay in business? And a lot of people got left behind, you know, or had to play catch up. So it was just skateboarding, and it just kept me young, and you know, your mind, you know, is young, and you know, and there's music and art, and I just lucked into it. You know, I always say it's being in the right place at the right time.